U.S. rapper and music mogul Sean Diddy Combs was found guilty of prostitution offences but cleared of more serious charges after a criminal trial in which two of the music mogul's former girlfriends testified that he physically and sexually abused them. Combs was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution but acquitted of racketeering and 2 counts of sex trafficking, a partial win for the man known as he who elevated hip-hop in American culture. Combs's defense lawyers argued that while his client may have committed domestic violence in the context of volatile romantic partnerships, his conduct did not amount to sex trafficking. Let's get some reaction. We're joined by Director-Wise for Afrika and anti-GBV activist advocate Brenda Madumise-Pajibo and legal expert Ulrich le Roux. Good to have both of you, and thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let's start with the legal side of things. So, Ulrich, let me begin with you. I mean, we see what came out yesterday. Diddy ended with 2 guilty verdicts, the lesser of the serious crimes he was facing, and an acquittal on those 3 other charges. What was your reaction when you heard this?
Well, you know, the American legal system is, of course, much different to the South African legal system in that they have a jury system. You know, there's a trial and there's witnesses who testify and there's cross-examination by the defense. But at the end of the day, the decision is left in the hands of 12 members of society to determine whether he indeed committed these crimes or not. And in this instance, they found that the charges of racketeering and conspiracy to commit prostitution, that those charges had not been proven against Diddy, but that he was in fact guilty of transportation in terms of a prostitution charge. And what that actually entails is that he participated in the transportation of a person across state lines with the intent of engaging with her in acts of prostitution, which is a charge which is not recognized in South African law, but indeed in the United States it is recognized as an offence, and for which the maximum sentence that could be imposed is up to 10 years imprisonment. Now, I think that it is a victory for Diddy and his team that he was acquitted on the serious charges, of course. And from what I read and my research into the matter, it seems as if he would most likely, because this is a first-time offence in terms of the charges that he was convicted of, he will most likely receive a fine or a suspended sentence. So certainly a victory in his eyes and in his legal team's eyes, I think. But at the end of the day, you know, when charges are preferred against a person, same as in South Africa, then evidence must be led, and the evidence must prove that that person committed a crime. And if it doesn't, then the right decision was made that he was acquitted on those serious charges. Yeah,
indeed. Something called the Mann Act. That's something that in the US is exactly what it is, and it holds a 10-year sentence, but guidelines suggest 51 to 63 months in total. So there's wide varieties here. Just before I move on to some more reaction, I just want to ask you, Ulrich, in terms of the date, do we know a date yet for sentencing? Because there's been talk as early as next week, or it could be in October, even though he was denied bail. Do we have any idea yet?
As far as I'm concerned, there's no date yet, or you know, they haven't set a date. But you know, in South Africa, in terms of sentencing, there would be all kinds of pre-sentence formalities, such as you know, social workers' reports, correctional supervision reports, etc. He must be assessed by a psychologist. So I think that it's the same procedure that will be followed in the States in terms of a just sentence that will be handed down. But just for clarity, the maximum sentence that could be imposed is a period of 10 years imprisonment on each of the 2 charges that he was convicted of. Yeah, but as I said before, you know, there are his personal circumstances that need to be taken into account, and the fact that he has not been convicted of these types of offences previously certainly count in his favour as a mitigating circumstance, and indications are that he would likely receive a fine or suspended.
Yeah. Well, let's let's now get some reaction in terms of this ruling, Advocate, from your side. I mean, obviously, this is Sean Diddy Combs' case has become one of the most high-profile criminal trials of the decade, and there are both sides to this argument. Some saying that justice has absolutely been denied, but others are saying, well, that's just the law in America, and it's the way it is. What's your version?
In matters such as these, where powerful men use their power and control, and for me, it's for us to stop for a second and just think about what those charges were, right? So we didn't talk of trafficking and racketeering, and there was coercion on the part of many of the victims and survivors of Diddy. And you then, as a jury, find that there might not have been sufficient evidence, even though there was some evidence. And here's the thing for me. All along, no one believed the women who came forward about Diddy and the many women who come when the allegations of sexual assault, violation, and rape by powerful men. We don't believe those women. We started believing what Casey Ventura said when we saw that video. Many people changed their views about Diddy, but all along, Diddy was the only thing that mattered, and that he was being targeted because he's a black man. There's nothing like that. He is a deplorable, violent man, right? Here in this case, what we do as countries is that we have a legal system that puts you and I, and that the burden lies with us to convince everybody else that I was violated. And if you have a jury of your peers sitting there who do not have an appreciation and understanding of what that is all about, and that we don't understand the power of control and the power of coercion, then you are going to have these kinds of verdicts that we have received, and people claiming that Diddy is victorious. If you believe that he's victorious and you're celebrating this verdict, you are a deplorable human being.
And there were a lot of them outside the courts, all spraying, what was it, baby oil at each other and begging for him to be free and walk away. But let's look at the facts that were presented before us. In America, there's something called the statute of limitations, which of course is something where you're not able to convict somebody if a time frame has come up. And these time frames that come up, the stories of abuse, unfortunately. There's also the idea that Cassie Ventura had settled this. In fact, within a day, she received $20 million once that video had come out. So she'd settled out of court for that video that we saw in the hotel of the abuse that Diddy had enforced on her. And then, most importantly, there's this clause that, and I think many people are arguing this one, we do understand that there certainly was depraved behavior that was conducted, and I think we heard many instances of depraved behavior, but was it a crime? Ulrich, let me come to you, and then Advocate, I'm going to come to you too.
Yes, of course, there are going to be highly charged emotions surrounding this matter, and as you say, it was a high-profile matter, and he's obviously a very well-known person, not only throughout America, but throughout the world. So opinions are going to differ surrounding this, but at the end of the day, from a legal point of view and a factual point of view, one must look at the charges that were preferred against him by the prosecutors in the United States and whether those charges were proven or not. And quite simply, if they weren't proven, then he must be acquitted of those serious charges. If they were proven, as is the case with the two charges in terms of the transportation and prostitution charges, then he should be found guilty, as he rightfully was. So, it is now in the hands of him receiving a just sentence for the crimes that he was convicted of. All of the other, videos which depicts his domestic violence, etc., and the allegations, those charges were not leveled against him in this matter. And even though those videos were played to the jury and it was shown in order to depict his character, rightfully so by the prosecution. He did not face those charges in this matter. So, once again, one can let emotions run high, and people can get very emotional about this, and accusations can be leveled against people about whether they support him or not. But on a factual, legal basis, if the evidence was not sufficient in the charges leveled against him, then the acquittal on those serious charges is the right decision, in my view.
Yeah. So having said that, I mean, obviously we're dealing with adults, and I mean, Cassie Ventura and the witness called Jane Doe that came forward, they were adults as well, and they were not underage. There are allegations of people being underage at these parties. However, I mean, the stories that came out of it, they were horrific. We're not going to go through them, but these are stories that I imagine, Advocate Madumise, these are stories that, of course, in terms of the fight for gender-based violence and high-profile cases like this, and one gets away with it. I mean, the stories that we heard coming out of this case and the understanding of gender-based violence, what do you say a case like this actually does in shaping communities and the stories of gender-based violence, and heroes like Combs, or Diddy, as he likes to be known as now, does to the psyche of others that want to engage in this kind of behavior?
So a couple of things. One is this case and many other cases, from Omodoso to many other cases in this country, is that you are not going to get victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault coming forward because of what they are put through and the diligence that is required to ensure that you win your case. And when I've given you proof and you're still diddling around and not doing what you are supposed to do. So what happens is that most victims, when they see things like this, they decide, it's not worth it. I'm not going to bother at all. The second thing that we also be mindful of is cases decide to do the civil claim and have a settlement on a civil and pursue a civil suit precisely because she didn't want to go through the criminal process, because the standard to prove is beyond reasonable doubt. And when you have someone with that kind of money who's got the power to tell everyone believing him first, they believe you, your chances are very slim. So we need to put that within a context, right? And yes, there were adults, but these are adults who were coerced. And we all know that she could not leave. Her mother testified in this case that every time she wanted to leave, she would be brought back and be beaten, right?
Yeah.
So all of that can be looked at in isolation. The second thing is that it emboldens many men to think that they can do these kinds of things and get away with it. And they continue to get away with it because when they see their heroes behaving in this manner and in fact getting acquitted, what stops me from doing the same? And in fact, a society will continue to support you. We look at a cost-benefit analysis. Do I go to the Chris Brown show even though I know Chris Brown is abusive and is violent? What is the benefit to me? I'm going to enjoy his music. I don't care what he has done. And that's where we are as society. Yeah. We reason away, we explain away depraved and deplorable behavior. So it's going to continue that men think that they can get away with it because the law, we believe that the law is in their favor. I don't believe that. But it's when the state that acts on your behalf and you and I's behalf, and the case has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt, and that proving of beyond reasonable doubt is dependent on me, someone who has been violated, to ensure that happens. We are placing a heavy burden on victims all the time.
Yeah, and also advice to people. I think a lot of people are old enough to know what they're doing, and we could see this in this case. And it's also for those saying, but however, is that when you have a powerful man like Diddy, who has money, he has influence, and he gets away with this, it's very difficult, I imagine, as we heard from testimonies, for people to say no because of the consequences that happen thereof. Ulrich, very quickly, we're running out of time, but I just want to get, if a case like this was held in South Africa, if the same case, move it away from America, put it in South Africa, would there be the same outcome? I know it's a difficult one because you don't have the reams of evidence in front of you, but just from what we know, would this have worked out differently?
It's an impossible question to answer, unfortunately.
I know.
But because in America, obviously, they have the jury system. There's 12 people of your peers who make a decision on whether the charges against you have been proven or not. Where in South Africa, you either have a magistrate or a judge who decides, based on the evidence presented to him or her, whether the charges have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt or not. The test and the onus is also different in the two different countries. In South Africa, you only need your version as an accused person only needs to be reasonably and possibly true, whereas the state needs to prove a case against you beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
In America, on a balance of probabilities, the jury will determine whether you are guilty or not of the charges that you are facing. So we certainly have different acts in South Africa, and he would have been charged with different offences in South Africa, but whether he would have been found guilty here or not, it's difficult to say, unfortunately.
Yeah. Just finally, as I go, and Advocate Madumise, I know I've got less than a minute, not even a minute. What precedent, if any, does this trial set for how celebrity power is treated in gender-based violence cases?
We glorify it. That's simple. We glorify it. And as I said earlier, we do a cost-benefit analysis. Is the scandal serious enough for me to cancel the individual? So people look at that and look at those kinds of things and decide for themselves. So he's a celebrity. He's well-renowned. He's important. We're going to continue to play his music. We don't see anything wrong with what he has done.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Scandals don't change people's. It doesn't anymore. We'll continue to celebrate it. We'll celebrate violence. We celebrate abuse of human beings. Because he has not been found guilty by a court of law. We don't look at the moral implications and all of that.
Yeah, Advocate, we got to leave it there. Advocate Madumise and legal expert Ulrich le Roux talking to us about that verdict from the Diddy crimes yesterday, that sentence being, we're waiting for the sentence, hopefully next week, or we're not too sure when this is going to happen, but there's a lot that came out of this and a lot of commentary around it.